Hello and welcome. I am Zabraxi, and I absolutely love video games. But, not all of them. I love a lot of things in life, and they tend to be the most critically important aspects of my happiness, like my girlfriend, my mom, The Legend of Dragoon, or that feeling when you're incredibly tired and you just start rubbing your eyes, and you somehow end up stuck in this loop of just rubbing, and you can't seem to stop because every rub is better than the last, and your mind can't even fathom the act of stopping.
No, come back later. I'll be ready for the next segment, I swear.
The thing is, I'm not a man of many hobbies, but the few that I have, I am incredibly passionate about. I love playing video games. I love listening to game design talks on the internet about video games. I love making videos about video games, and I just recently started learning a couple of engines so that way I can make some of my own video games. I very clearly have a common thread in my list of interests, but then I started to wonder, if I love video games so damn much, then why don't I actually love more of them?
Oh man, just do the rest of the video without me.
It's kind of funny to say, but despite 90% of my free time being dedicated to the games industry in some capacity, I actually wouldn't say that I love many games. In fact, I don't love most games. I like a ton of them and find value and satisfaction of some kind in most. It takes a lot for me to say a game is genuinely bad or a waste of my time. I mean, heck, I find games like Shaq Fu super enjoyable. Sure, it's a little bit more ironic, but invite some friends over and play this and I guarantee you will be laughing more than you ever have. So why do I like most games, but find it so dang hard to love many of them? Well, to start with the lowest hanging fruit, some games just really aren't worth loving, are they? Some are terrible, or incomplete, or offensive, or just don't click with you in that I like you sort of way. Sometimes it's really obvious. When I played Immortals Fenyx Rising on my Switch at launch, which, by the way, I still think Gods and Monsters was a way better title, Ubisoft, I don't know what you were doing there. I knew very quickly that despite how well designed a ton of the experience was, that I wouldn't love it because the performance at launch was just so bad. Playing through a title like this in the modern age, operating at less than 20 FPS regularly, destroyed so much desire that I could have ever had for it. But on that point, is it mostly that the quality bothers me because of the modern age, though? I mean, I absolutely love Ocarina of Time, and that game also runs at a frame rate that agonizes me sometimes. But perhaps the key context here is simply the release date. It's funny how some of us can often give a lot of slack to a piece of art based on, well, when it came out. I mean, Star Fox on the Super Nintendo looks terrible, but being that it's on the Super Nintendo, it looks f***ing incredible. But then take Star Fox 2, which actually looks better than the original, but suffers from the same performance issues, so I just end up not liking it nearly as much for some reason. It's so easy to explain away the feeling of a game that is just bad, but it's these other things that make it a bit more complicated. Like, if someone asks me why I don't love Paper Mario Sticker Star, it's easy. Because that game f***ing sucks. What about those games, though, that you really like, but you probably wouldn't say you love it because a part of you actually feels guilty for even thinking it? You know, maybe like a game that had a severe controversy around it. Like, for some of you, it might be easy to say that you love Cyberpunk 2077 now that its expansion is out and it's actually really good, but to say that at launch would mean getting your house graffitied by, well, most of the world's population. Do you know how weird it is now to say that Diablo 2 is one of my favorite games of all time? Like seriously, how awkward that feels to say now? Do you know how frustrating it is to say that Diablo 2 Resurrected might be the best thing ever, but there's this annoying little nagging feeling in the back of my mind that reminds me of all of the terrible and gross things that happened at Blizzard Entertainment over the years? Do you know what it's like to have a successful YouTube channel that within 6 months was making hundreds of dollars a month, but I had to stop doing it because the controversy and consistently terrible business practices and products being peddled by that company? Do you know how frustrating it is to say that Warcraft 3 is one of my favorite games of all time while knowing knowing full well that its legacy was completely dismantled and tainted by the sheer incompetence and negligence that was Warcraft 3 Reforged and all that it did to the multiplayer scene, and by removing the original game? Do you know what it's like to have met some of my all-time best friends from World of Warcraft, a game that has forever changed me in terms of life skills and potential career path, but to look at it now with disgust as it continues to exercise the most egregiously manipulative business practices, all while continuing to deliver mediocre content compared to its peers? Do you know that feeling? Like, those games are life-defining for me, and now, when I mention them, there's this kind of skin crawl, and like my mouth just salivates and my body just heats up because these have had such an effect for me, and I used to love them. And I mean, it shouldn't, right? Like, these things shouldn't really bother me that much, right? Like, separate the art and the artist, right? And typically, I am pretty good about that. I can appreciate a lot of art that was made by terrible people because the work of art itself can exist separate from the creator. But I think once you cross over the line of liking something into loving it, things get a bit more personal. And when you realize that something you adore and cherish so dearly had horrific things happening during its conception, that vulnerability that comes with love starts to become more real than it probably should. But there is one stain that will forever keep me emotionally distant, a pus-filled growth that just makes me sick even thinking about it, a tumor that actively damages the industry it is a part of.
Bobby Kotick. And if you think for a moment that I'm being unfair or a little dramatic about the Activision CEO, then let us not forget that time that he threatened to have his assistant murdered. Oh, if you're waiting for me to say allegedly, I don't need to. He admitted to doing it. So, yeah, does that make it a little hard to love the games he's involved in?
Sometimes, though, it's not a controversy that makes things difficult. Sometimes it's just you and your expectations. Pokemon is a series that I love. Or, actually, scratch that, correction. Perhaps I should say it's a series that I loved. While the series has never been a true exemplar of top-notch quality, it's impossible to deny that the series had kept up with great entries for quite some time. I mean, I know it's a popular thing to bag on Gen 1 nowadays, but even if you don't like them and can't acknowledge how genuinely great they were for their time, their remakes of Fire Red and Leaf Green, well, they killed it. They're awesome. They actually own. And follow that up with Heart Gold and Soul Silver to just, dude, they're so good. And we haven't even hit the legendary masterpiece of Platinum, which has gone from being a game I completely skipped at launch to possibly my favorite in the entire series. Or heck, what about the super interesting narratives and the insane soundtracks behind both sets of Black and White games? Or heck, even X and Y, sure, have become a bit of this like kind of love-hate relationship for a lot of people, but actually for the first exploration into the 3D space, it was a good first step.
And then they just started to suck.
I actually don't hate Sword and Shield, but they really weren't all that great in the grand scheme of things. Like, they were fine, and I think they were actually even good. Both sets of the Sun and Moon games, though, still exist as the only mainline Pokemon games I've never finished, and each new release just seems to make being a fan more and more exhausting than the last release. I had thought, alright, I guess I just don't like Pokemon at all. But then I played Uranium and thought, hey, I like Pokemon a lot, actually. I love this game. I love Uranium. Pokemon actually is still rad as hell in the right hands. Is it the fact that the core driving force of the Pokemon brand, the video games, consistently releasing at unacceptably low levels of quality? Is that part of the problem? Does it make it more frustrating that Pokemon is the largest media brand in the entirety of human history, but often feels like a budget gaming experience? Does that make it a little more difficult?
Yes, of course it does.
Does the fact that Pokemon Uranium was made by a group of passionate fans that created something on par with the entries in the franchise for free, only to be shut down by a monolithic corporation, does that make me appreciate Uranium more than I normally would have?
Yes, of course it does.
I don't want to just go on a Pokemon rant, but my expectations of what the series is capable of and what is delivered are completely out of sync, and each year I find myself less and less likely to say that I love these games. But at least the plus side is it's exposed me to games that deserve more of my attention, like Temtem, or Cassette Beasts, heck, or all of the incredible fan games out there, like Fenyx Rising, Insurgents, Prism, or Azurite. Knowing that something is made from raw passion absolutely makes me feel more connected to an experience. It feels more intimate and seemingly minimizes its flaws. I love Kenna the Bridge of Spirits, despite it being, honestly, a fine game, but yet I don't love other arguably better games that came out during the PS5 launch. But the fact that it's such a small studio and had released things like that Majora's Mask trailer back in the day definitely make it feel more intimate, therefore it's easier for me to say I love it. I can probably say that I love Dust and Elysian Tale because it was made by one person, and even though it's hardly the best of its genre, knowing it's a solo passion project kind of seems to blur the line between a paying customer and a product into something more of an artistic experience. There are just so many dang games out there, and it's hard to love each of them that you enjoy. So many factors can weigh into that emotion. I love everything that Supergiant Games has released, for example. Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, Hades, everything they seem to touch is a masterpiece to me. Are they all the best in their genre? No. Hades might be. Are they all the best games I've ever played? No. Well, Bastion might be. But I can remember the founding of Supergiant Games. I can remember the developers leaving their jobs from massive companies to form a smaller studio at a time where indie development was still incredibly hostile. I remember hearing that narrator in Bastion for the first time. I remember the soundtrack hitting me as it opened my mind to the idea that taking a massive risk in life can sometimes create such a beautiful work of art that can change people. And each and every title that comes out from Supergiant Games reminds me of those emotions. It's that little extra X factor that levels up my liking a game into loving it regardless of the quality. Guild Wars isn't the best game I've ever played, but the fact that some of my best friends in life were met from that experience, yeah, of course I love it. It also is actually one of the best games ever made, so that makes it easy. Love for a piece of art extends any measurable and critical quality of a product. Games like The Last Campfire, Lost Ember, Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, and Hob are all basically just as good as each other. All four are incredibly great games. But Brothers made me cry like a toddler having their cake taken away from them. So yeah, I love that one in particular. Now, to be honest, I have absolutely no idea what the hell I'm even trying to say with all of this. Here I am trying to rationalize an emotion that is quite literally defined by its irrationality. I'll play a stellar game like Hi-Fi Rush and be like, yeah, this game rocks! But then play Sea of Stars and be so inspired by that team that made it, be so moved by the potential to create life-changing art that this retro-inspired JRPG by a group of people I've never heard of has motivated me to learn game development in my free time. Why? How? And how in the world is that to the game's credit? The reality is that liking a game and loving a game can be massively different experiences that mean massively different things to massively different people. Yet, here I am, attempting to identify what makes that difference for me in hopes that I can more consistently seek and experience new adventures that not only make me have a more fun free time, but that can have an impact on the core of my being. The very true soul of myself. To achieve that, though, requires the stars to align. It requires capturing lightning in a bottle. It requires the right team at the right time with the right ideas to hit the right person without any detraction to take focus away from the player. It requires something that, honestly, probably can't ever be manifested. Yet, love can so quickly be confronted with frustration as someone tells me that they love a game I can't stand, and it somehow makes me upset. It makes me want to ruin the parade they are so proudly enjoying. But why? Why do I care? Sure, I may hate everything that Blizzard has become, but if someone loves Overwatch 2, for some ungodly reason, then I need to let them party in that state of being. It's so hard to love most games because having such an emotional stake in a corporatized product is genuinely dangerous. It's so hard to love most games because external factors that can't be decided upon you or the development team will have a massive say in that experience. It's so hard to love most games because best of the best only happens when most things are average. But when it happens, when everything lines up, when there's no controversy, and the quality is right, and the timing is perfect, and everything falls into place, then damn, that's when you get to play The Legend of Dragoon.
I'm totally just rambling about loving games here, so what is it for you? What is that thing that moves you from liking a game to truly loving it? What is that special X factor? Are you like me where you're not quite sure? Because I just hope that by exploring this a little bit that maybe you and I can move to love more games, because besides getting like an extra chicken nugget in your Happy Meal, what's better than that? Bye-bye!